Today we are going to talk about the Institute in different things. First, what are the issues that the Institute is looking to address? And these issues are three. They have been, we have been talking about it since this morning. They are the statistics issues. We also have the issue of the cost, and last, we also have the issue of the social impact. As it was mentioned this morning, it's not only about statistics on volume, statistics on cost, but it's also about the impact of the remittances for those who send and those who receive the money. And for that, we'll also talk about the AIR program. What are our programs? What are we doing actually? And the last part on the leveraging part will be addressed by Don, who is the one who's been working with the Institute since the beginning during the preparatory phase, but also who is supporting the Institute actually that we are operational. Just a figure to remind that ourselves that this morning we said that the total volume of remittance to Africa reached the number of around 66 billion in 2015. And this is almost 11.3% of the total remittance worldwide. The most important thing here is that 20% of these 66 billion are generated from Africa. It is from intra-Africa remittances. It means that when we talk about remittance, it's not only the relation between Africa and the rest of the world, but also we are looking at issues that are within the continent. The good thing in the remittances is that the trend, as it was shown by Leon in his presentation, the trend is growing. Remittance is consistently increasing in Africa, remittance to Africa. This is a little bit different from the other kind of flows to Africa. Second, remittances are very stable, reliable in that case, both at the macroeconomic level, but also for the social, for the beneficiaries. These are some like income for those who are benefiting from the remittances. Third, we cannot discuss the impact of remittance. It has a lot of impact. Somebody talked about the safety net, and at the microeconomic level, it is like a social safety net, but also at the macroeconomic level, we'll see that it is the highest external resource for most of the African countries. And for most of the African countries, it's more than the FDIs, the ODA, and whatever you want. But there are some challenges here, and this is what we are trying to do. It is to overcome all the challenges so that we can get more remittances sent through informal, through formal or formal channels. So the challenges that we have is that we have a lot of volume, a lot of flows that are sent through informal and for different reasons. One of the reasons is the level of cost. When we look at the cost, this is an average. In average, what we have, 8.88% of is the cost of sending money to Africa. This is 5.88% higher than the common objective that we have, which is to lower the cost to 3% maximum. So it means that we have a lot of challenges. There are things that we should address, but for us to do that, we should understand why is it so expensive. That's the objective of one of the objectives of the Institute. It is to reduce the cost of the remittance cost of sending money to and within Africa, and also we have developed some programs to be able to do that. But before that, let's look at the figures. Look at this here. You will see this is now the average cost of sending money. We've picked here $200 sending money to Africa per corridor. You see, the range is very high. It is from 22.9% of sending money from Nigeria to Benin. And we have some very low rates here, for example, from sending money from Saudi Arabia to Sudan, which is 1.6. And in between, you will see that we have different ranges. What we will see here is that the most expensive corridors, those who are in red here, they are intra-Africa corridors. They are corridors from Nigeria to Benin, Nigeria to Mali, South Africa to Nigeria, South Africa to Mozambique, Nigeria to Togo, South Africa to Lesotho, Cameroon to Nigeria, and Tanzania to Kenya. These are the figures that we have based on the last data that we have. But there are a lot of corridors that are not documented. A lot of corridors for which we don't have the prices. But at least for those that we have here the prices. The most expensive are in intra-Africa, and this has to be addressed. Our objective is to bring all these ones to the lower right hand of this. If we had to divide this into 4, we have 4 squares, and we want to bring all of them, like where around United States to Nigeria, which is 4.3, but it's still high, but also Kuwait to Egypt. We have some other corridors that are still expensive, and those corridors, the figures did not show, the link did not work. But this is really what we have here. It is all the countries that are here for which we didn't put any figure or whatever. Those are mainly Western countries. The corridors from UK, the corridors from USA, corridors from France, and so the EU member states and some other corridors to Africa. Those are the ones that are here. And we'll see that for those corridors, the cost is around 4 to up to 10%, including Germany and so and so. Unfortunately, this is what we will have. Okay. Now the issue is, if we have, for the Institute, we have identified those corridors which are our priorities when it comes to cost. The corridors that we want to address first, there are corridors to Nigeria, Egypt, Tunisia, Algeria, Ghana, Senegal, and Kenya. The reason why we picked those corridors, they are the countries, the African countries that benefit more from the remittances. Even for some of them, for some corridors, it's not so as expensive as, but because of the volume, it is important for us to keep an eye on those corridors. The second, if you look at the cost, we are looking at all the corridors that are from South Africa, Nigeria, Tanzania, Italy, Spain, Germany, and so and so to African countries. All those corridors. Though we will not look at the corridors from these countries to all of the other countries, but we'll pick them up. On top of that, remittance is not only about cost and volume, it's also about impact. It was mentioned that for some countries, the ratio between remittance and GDP is so high, and those countries include Cape Verde, Gambia, Liberia, Lesotho, Comoro, Madagascar, Sao Tome, Principe, and Angola. We'll see, though for Angola it's not related to the GDP, but it's related to the importance of their relation with some specific country, which is Portugal. These are the corridors that we as Institute, we are trying to address, and to lower the cost in these corridors. If we focus on these corridors, we are sure that we have addressed almost 90% of the cost of sending money to Africa. And we have been monitoring the figures on these corridors through our website, the Send Money Africa. Hope that you are all familiar to that. It is this. From there, you can have, for selected corridors, you can have the cost of sending money from selected one country to another in Africa. Please visit this website, which is a very, very informative website. Now, what are we doing as Institute? We have developed a technical assistance program to assist member states, remittance senders, remittance recipients, on different issues related to remittances. But the program that we are actually carrying out, it is the technical assistance to the member states to help them to improve the barriers that we find in the remittance market. They were listed by Lewon, but let's just repeat some of them, which is the lack of competition, the issue of the regulations, and so and so. We are trying to address all the challenges that we have that are impeding the competition in the remittance market. And this, we are doing it with some of our key partners that I would like to just remind here. During the preparatory phases, we worked with the EU, the World Bank, the ADB, IOM, and also actually we have been working with some different partners, including ADEB. I think that Jibril in his presentation will talk about more about the Nairobi Declaration and what we are intending to do with them and the other partners that we have. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Dunn to talk about the leveraging part of remittances. Thank you.
Thanks, Amadou. I have been involved, as Amadou said, with helping to develop the African Institute for Remittances for the past several years, and it's great that it has now become operational. So the AU is fully invested in this program, and we're going to see where it goes forward over the next several years. Now, I was asked to do this for the AU because I had had some experience in Latin America when I worked for the Inter-American Development Bank. And so I'm here to say to people who are interested in Africa, this isn't just theory. This can actually happen because it has happened. So we started looking at remittances 1998, 1999, so almost 20 years ago. And in that period of time, over the last 20 years, I've come to think about remittances as sort of three baskets. The first basket is volume, data, how much money is being sent. And I think around the world over the past 15 years or so, we've gotten pretty good at this. But not yet for Africa. So that's important, that we understand how much money is being sent. Now, the World Bank used to get very upset when I would say many years ago that all the numbers that they were putting forward were wrong. It was the best they could do, but they were wrong. So I stopped saying they were wrong. But let me say that the $65 billion for Africa, I'll be nice and I'll say it's a gross underestimate. So 5 years from now, when the work that's being done by everybody around this table, when we find out that the data is going to be improved through AIR and ACP and others, when we find out that the actual number is well over $100 billion, I think we should save a lot of PhD theses from being written about why the volume is increasing so fast, because it's the reporting that will be getting better, if you understand what I'm saying. Well, when you see the numbers from the World Bank about how remittances have gone up dramatically, and there are many, many, many PhD dissertations being written about that, they're also finding out that the volume hasn't increased as much as the reporting has improved. So that will happen for Africa, and that's important. Because if we think the $65 billion is important, we'll think that $100 billion is even more important. And we're going to find that out shortly. In terms of the costs, those are also coming down. And as Amadou said, they've been coming down worldwide but we've still got some real gaps in Africa, and that can be worked on for all of the reasons that have been talked about here before, particularly the use of technology. Okay. But when we talk about how much is being sent and how much it costs, we're talking about numbers, and we had a very good start, I think, to the session today with a plea to get beyond the numbers, to get to think about the people, the numbers of people that we're really talking about. And so the social impact. When we talk about how much is being sent and how much it costs, we're mostly focusing on the sending side. The development side is on the receiving end. And that needs to be focused on equally, is on the receiving end. What can be done to leverage the impact of that official 65 billion, or the real number, 100 billion, that's being sent to Africa right now? I find it almost impossible to deal with numbers in the billions, or the tens of billions, or the hundreds of billions, with all of the zeros. So I find it useful to focus on the average remittance, which might be $100 or $200 or $300. So how can you help those families that are receiving it? And by the way, if we want to think about numbers, just for another second, of the 250 million people who send, again, that's the sending side, they're sending back home to maybe another 750 million people. So if we're thinking about remittances, we ought to think about remittance families, because the senders are sending home to their relatives back home, and the numbers are probably 3 times as much worldwide when you bring it all together. So if we focus on the receiving end, where the development impact can be the greatest, it's great to knock the cost down. It's great to get the data. But in the end, we're trying to figure out how to leverage the impact. Now, when economists started to find out about the volume, they said, wow. But you know, it's all for consumption. Consumption being a bad term. Investment being a good term. It's all for consumption. Well, when they said consumption, they said they were thinking, well, daily needs, but a lot of the daily needs are improved housing, improved education, improved health, improved nutrition, and the rest. But okay, those people also are very resourceful. They save money, both on the sending and the receiving end. How can we get more of that money to go into small businesses? But when we think about that, we ought not to be thinking, in my opinion, about how we can channel this money into more productive activities. We should be thinking about how can you provide the remittance families with more options to use the money. And if you give them more options to use their money, if you provide them with savings accounts, if you give them options to invest in a small business, they'll do it. But the idea that up here someplace, we're going to channel the money into more productive activities, I don't think that that's a very useful way of looking at it. How do you give these millions and tens of millions of families more options to use their money? Financial literacy, financial inclusion. These are the types of things that need to be done at the local level. So, what AIR will be doing, I mean, you have to start someplace. Start with the data. We drive costs down. But the development impact is working with the local NGOs, with the local communities, to see how we can help the families living in those areas to leverage the impact of their money. So, we get together because the numbers are so huge. But in the end, I think that the development impact is to figure out how we can help these families leverage that $100, $200, $300 that they're receiving. And I'm very pleased to be able to work with AIR to be able to do that. And you'll be hearing later from Mauro Martini from IFAD that's doing that throughout the world, but particularly in Africa, in terms of the rural areas, the towns and villages where these people have left. And remember, whether we're talking about refugees, which is, Leon said, is about 8% of the total, so overwhelmingly we're talking about economic migrants. No matter how many people leave, more people stay behind. And that's the focus, is the receiving end, not the sending end. And so eventually, if we can figure out how to leverage the development impact of these resources, then we will also lessen the pressure for future generations to migrate. And as Ifad likes to say, and I might be stealing one of Amadou's line, get to the point where migration is more of a choice than a necessity. Thank you.